The insignificant request. The repair ticket flashed across Chief Technician Vexcar's display screen with the kind of mundane simplicity that made his sensory tendrils twitch with boredom. Request number 847392 in the Galactic Maintenance Hub's endless queue of problems that needed solving across 17 sectors of known space. The request read, "Minor power fluctuation in primary grid. Causing slight inconvenience. Please advise when available." Vexcar's three eyes blinked in sequence as he processed the message. In his 400 years as the premier engineering specialist of the Zelthian Technical Consortium, he had seen every possible configuration of starship malfunction, station failure, and planetary infrastructure collapse. He had personally redesigned the core systems of 12 different species' homeworlds. He had written 3 of the 5 standard textbooks used across the Galactic Council's engineering academies. And now he was looking at a request about a minor power fluctuation. His assistant, a young Krell named Daxim, leaned over his workstation with curiosity evident in the faint glow of his bioluminescent patches. The Krell were known for their meticulous attention to detail, which made them excellent engineers, despite their relative youth as a spacefaring species. "Chief Vexcar, should I assign this to a junior technician?" Daxim asked, his voice carrying the slight whistling quality common to a species. Vexcar was about to agree when something in the location data caught his attention. The request originated from Theta 9, an asteroid cluster in the Outer Rim territories. The colony designation showed human settlement. Humans. Vexcar's tendrils stiffened slightly. The newest members of the Galactic Council had developed quite the reputation in the mere 2 centuries since first contact. They were unpredictable, often reckless, and possessed an unsettling habit of solving problems in ways that made established engineers deeply uncomfortable. "No," Vexcar said slowly. "I will handle this personally." Daxim's patches flickered in surprise. "Chief, surely a minor power fluctuation does not require your direct attention. You are scheduled to review the new quantum relay designs for the Vorgath home fleet." "Reschedule it," Vexcar replied, already pulling up detailed scans of the Theta 9 colony. When humans describe something as a minor inconvenience, experience suggests we should investigate thoroughly. The journey to Theta 9 took 6 standard cycles aboard the technical support vessel Precision. Vexcar brought a small team, Daxim for detailed analysis, an Ixian named Quelm, whose species specialized in energy systems, and 2 automated repair drones equipped with every diagnostic tool the Galactic Council had approved for fieldwork. As they approached the asteroid cluster, Quelm's sensor console moved rapidly across her display. Her horizontal pupils dilated with each new reading that appeared on her screen. "Chief Vexcar, I am detecting highly irregular energy signatures throughout the cluster. Multiple power sources operating in configurations that do not match any standard protocols." "Define irregular," Vexcar commanded. "The primary fusion reactor is outputting at 73% efficiency, which is 12% below minimum safe operational standards. However, there are 17 secondary power sources scattered throughout the mining facilities, each one generating energy through different means. I detect solar collectors, geothermal taps into the asteroid cores, what appears to be a matter-antimatter reaction chamber operating without proper containment shielding, and something I cannot identify that is producing energy through a process my sensors cannot categorize." Vexcar's heart rate increased. Operating a fusion reactor below minimum safe operational standards was grounds for immediate shutdown and full investigation. The presence of an improperly shielded antimatter chamber was cause for evacuation and criminal charges. Daxim scanned for life signs. How many humans are in this colony? The Krell's fingers danced across his console. 247 humans, Chief, all showing normal life signs. There are also 15 other species present, mostly contract workers and traders. 247 people living in what should be a disaster zone. "Open a communication channel," Vexcar ordered. A moment later, a human face appeared on the main display. The woman looked to be in her middle years by human standards, with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that sparkled with unmistakable amusement. "Well, that was fast," she said cheerfully. "We just sent that ticket yesterday. Usually takes the hub about 3 weeks to respond to outer rim requests. I am Chief Technician Vexcar of the Zelthian Technical Consortium. I am here to address your reported power fluctuation. However, our scans indicate far more serious concerns. Your primary reactor is operating dangerously below standard efficiency, and we detect multiple unauthorized power generation systems. The woman's smile widened. Oh, that? Yeah, the old girl's been running a bit rough lately. We've been meaning to do a full maintenance cycle, but you know how it is. Always something more important to handle. I'm Sarah Okonkwo, by the way, Chief of Maintenance here on Theta 9. Ms. Okonkwo, Vexcar said carefully, you are aware that operating a fusion reactor at your current efficiency levels violates 14 different Galactic Council safety regulations. Is that all? Sarah laughed. Listen, Chief, why don't you come aboard and take a look for yourself? Might be easier to explain in person. I'll have Docking Bay 3 prepped for you. The communication ended before Vexcar could protest. 30 minutes later, the team stood in the main corridor of Theta 9's central habitat module, and Vexcar understood immediately why the humans had called their problem a minor inconvenience. The corridor should not have been habitable. The temperature readings showed fluctuations of 15 degrees across a single 10-meter span. The atmospheric processors were jury-rigged with components from at least 6 different manufacturers, none of which were designed to interface with each other. Power conduits ran along the walls in configurations that would have failed any first-year engineering student's practical exam. But humans walked past them without concern, some carrying equipment, others engaged in casual conversation. A group of children ran by, laughing as they chased what appeared to be a small maintenance drone that someone had modified to play games. Sarah Okonkwo met them at the entrance, wearing coveralls stained with a dozen different types of lubricant and coolant. She carried a toolkit that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, each implement slightly different from standard Galactic Council-approved equipment. Welcome to Theta 9, she said warmly. Sorry about the mess. We're in the middle of expanding the residential section, so things are a bit chaotic. Ms. Okonkwo, Vexcar began, but she waved him off. Please, call me Sarah. Come on, I'll show you what we need fixed. She led them deeper into the station, and with each step, Vexcar's professional horror grew. They passed through sections where the hull plating had been replaced with repurposed cargo containers. They walked under support beams that were clearly salvaged from 3 different types of spacecraft, welded together in a pattern that should have created catastrophic structural stress points. Qualm's arms trembled as she took readings. Chief, this entire section should have collapsed under its own mass distribution. The mathematical impossibility of what I'm seeing is causing my analysis programs to generate error reports. Tell me about it, Sarah said cheerfully, apparently having overheard despite the Ixian's quiet voice. When we first built this section, the computer said it wouldn't work, gave us about 47 different reasons why it would fail. But we needed the space, and we had the materials, so we figured we'd give it a shot. That was 8 years ago. You built a structure that your own computers told you would fail? Daxam asked, his patches flickering rapidly with distress. Well, the computer was working with standard engineering parameters. We just figured humans might do things a bit differently. As she entered a massive chamber that housed the main reactor, it was the culmination of everything wrong they had seen so far. The reactor sat in the center, humming with a rhythm that made Vexcar's trained ear immediately recognize the power fluctuation mentioned in the original ticket. But surrounding it was an incomprehensible web of additional systems, each one feeding into or drawing from the primary power grid in ways that defied conventional understanding. There she is, Sarah said with obvious affection. Our little Frankenstein. She's kept us running for 23 years now. Frankenstein? Vexcar asked. Old Earth story, about a scientist who built something that shouldn't have worked but did anyway. Seemed appropriate. Vexcar approached the reactor slowly, his engineering mind trying desperately to understand what he was seeing. The fluctuation was there, a rhythmic variance in output that pulsed every 17 seconds. But as he watched the surrounding systems, he realized something extraordinary. Each pulse coordinated with the activation of different secondary systems. When the reactor dipped to 73%, a solar collection array kicked in, compensating for the loss. When it spiked to any 6%, excess energy was shunted to a massive battery bank that fed the mining operations.
The antimatter chamber that alarmed Quelm was only active for 3-second bursts, timed perfectly to supplement power during peak demand periods. It was not a malfunction, it was a symphony. The fluctuation, Vexcar said slowly, is intentional. Well, sort of, Sarah admitted. The reactor started doing that about 2 years ago. We figured out it was because the magnetic containment coils were wearing out. Replacing them would mean shutting down the entire colony for 6 weeks, and we couldn't afford that. So, instead, we worked with the fluctuation, built the rest of our systems to complement it rather than fight it. You adapted your entire power grid to accommodate a failing reactor. Daxam's voice rose an octave. Worked, didn't it? Sarah shrugged. Look, I know this probably looks insane to you folks, but out here in the Rim territories, we don't have the luxury of perfect conditions and unlimited resources. We make do with what we have and what we can fix ourselves. Vexcar's 3 eyes focused on the reactor.
The human solution. For 3 standard cycles, Chief Technician Vexcar and his team analyzed every centimeter of Theta 9's power systems. What they discovered challenged everything the Galactic Council's engineering doctrine had established over 10,000 years of spacefaring civilization. Vexcar stood before the main reactor at the beginning of the 4th cycle, his sensory tendrils processing data streams from 17 different diagnostic tools simultaneously. Daxam worked beside him, his bioluminescent patches flickering in patterns that indicated deep concentration mixed with profound confusion. "Chief," the young Krell said, pulling up a holographic display that showed the power grid's complete architecture, "I have run the stability calculations 47 times. Each time, my analysis programs predict catastrophic failure within 6 to 8 weeks of initial operation. Yet this system has functioned for 23 years. Quelm emerged from beneath a secondary power coupling, her forearms covered in various lubricants. The Ixian engineer's horizontal pupils had been dilated in a state of near-constant shock since their arrival. "I have identified the antimatter reaction chamber's containment system," she announced, her melodic voice carrying an edge of disbelief. "It is held together by magnetic field generators salvaged from 3 different species technologies, none of which were designed to work together. The field harmonics should create destructive interference patterns. Instead, they have somehow achieved a stable resonance that actually improves containment efficiency by 8% over standard designs. That is impossible," Daxam stated flatly. "And yet," Vexcar murmured, "here it exists." Sarah Okonkwa's voice echoed from somewhere above them. "Found your problem, Chief." Vexcar looked up to see the human engineer suspended 30 meters above the reactor floor, dangling from a safety harness that appeared to be constructed from cargo netting and climbing rope. She hung upside down, working on a section of the magnetic containment housing with tools that looked homemade. "Ms. Okonkwo," Vexcar called out, his translator struggling to keep the alarm from his voice. "That position is extremely dangerous. Please return to the safety platform." "Can't reach the alignment servo from the platform," Sarah called back cheerfully. "Don't worry, I do this all the time. Found your fluctuation issue, by the way. One of the servo motors has a worn bearing. It's causing a 0.3-second variance in the magnetic field adjustment cycle." She twisted in her harness, reaching into a toolbox that hung beside her, and pulled out what appeared to be a component cannibalized from a completely different system. "This bearing is from a cargo lift motor," Quelm observed, her sensor readings identifying the part. "It is not rated for the precision requirements of reactor magnetic containment." "Yeah, it's not perfect," Sarah admitted, now working to install the component while hanging upside down 30 meters above an active fusion reactor, "but it'll get us another 6 months while we wait for the proper part to arrive from the core worlds. Shipping out here takes forever." Vexcar watched in fascinated horror as Sarah completed the installation in under 4 minutes, using techniques that would have required a full engineering team and 3 days of careful preparation under standard protocols. She pulled herself back up the cable with practiced ease and dropped onto the safety platform with a casual grace that suggested she had never considered the danger involved. "There," she said, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "Give it a test run." Daxam's fingers moved across his console, monitoring the reactor's performance. His patches blazed bright green, the Krell equivalent of astonishment. The fluctuation has stabilized. 17-second intervals, variance reduced to 0.03 seconds. This is within acceptable parameters. Within acceptable parameters? Vexcar repeated. Ms. Okonkwo, you just performed a critical reactor repair while suspended above an active fusion core, using an improvised part with no safety team present, and completed the entire procedure in less time it takes to file the proper safety documentation. Sarah grinned. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit reckless. But see, that's the thing about human engineering, Chief. We don't always wait for perfect conditions or perfect parts. We work with what we have, and we make it function. She gestured around the reactor chamber, her expression shifting from playful to serious. When our colony ship crashed in this asteroid cluster 25 years ago, we had two choices. We could follow every regulation, every safety protocol, every standard procedure, and die waiting for rescue that might never come. Or we could look at the wreckage, the resources in these asteroids, and the skills we had among our survivors, and build something that worked. Sarah pulled up the colony's history files. Images appeared in the holographic display, showing the early days of Theta 9. Vexcar saw the crashed colony ship, its hull split open like a broken egg. He saw humans working in makeshift pressure suits, welding together the first habitat modules from salvaged hull plating. He saw children, dozens of them playing in temporary shelters, while adults built permanent structures around them. We had 47 children under the age of 10 when we crashed, Sarah continued, her voice quiet but firm. We had elderly people who needed medical care. We had pregnant women who would give birth in the next few months. Every regulation we broke, every standard we ignored, every impossible modification we made, we did it because waiting for the proper way meant people would die. She pulled up another image, showing the colony as it existed now. Thriving gardens under artificial sunlight, workshops where humans and aliens worked side by side, schools where children learned to see problems as opportunities rather than obstacles. So yes, our reactor runs at 73% efficiency instead of 85%. Yes, we use parts that weren't designed for their current applications. Yes, we've built systems that your computers say shouldn't work. But every single person in this colony is alive, healthy, and productive because we decided that survival trumped perfection. Vexcar felt something shift in his understanding. He had spent 4 centuries mastering the art of engineering, learning to work within the boundaries of what was proven, tested, and approved. He had built his reputation on precision, on following established principles, on never deviating from the protocols that kept civilizations safe. But these humans had survived by doing the opposite. They had looked at limitations and asked, why? They had faced impossibilities and responded with, watch us. Your philosophy is fundamentally incompatible with Galactic Council engineering standards, he said slowly. I know, Sarah replied, and that's been a problem for us. Every inspection, every audit, every time a council engineer visits an outer rim human colony, we get violation citations. They threaten to shut us down, to force us to rebuild everything to code. But Chief, if we did that, these colonies couldn't exist. The cost and time required to meet every standard would make rim territory settlements economically impossible. Daxam stepped forward, his patches glowing with the cautious color pattern that indicated he was about to voice a controversial opinion. Perhaps the standards themselves are the problem, the young Krell said carefully. They were developed for species and civilizations that had time and resources to build perfectly. But humans colonize differently. They go to places we would consider unsuitable and make them work through adaptation rather than overwhelming resources. Quelm's forearms gestured in agreement. The antimatter containment system I examined should not function, yet its improvised design achieves better results than our standard approach. This suggests our standards may be optimized for one type of thinking, but fail to account for alternative methodologies.
Vexcar's 3 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed this heresy coming from his own team, but he could not deny what he had witnessed. The evidence surrounded him in every jerry-rigged system, every improvised component, every impossible modification that somehow worked. "Show me more," he said to Sarah. "I want to see everything you have built here." For the next 2 cycles, Sarah Okonkwo gave them a complete tour of Theta 9's infrastructure. She showed them the atmospheric recycling system that used biological filtration methods combined with mechanical processors, achieving 94% efficiency when standard systems maxed out at 87%. She demonstrated the mining equipment that had been modified to operate in ways the original manufacturers insisted was impossible, yet extracted rare minerals with unprecedented precision. In the agricultural section, Vexcar met a human botanist named James Park, who had created a hybrid growing system that combined hydroponics with soil cultivation and fungal networks. The system produced 40% more food per square meter than any standard agricultural platform. "The experts told me this wouldn't work," James explained, showing them rows of vegetables growing in impossible abundance. "They said the different systems would create pH imbalances and nutrient competition. But I figured plants don't read textbooks. I just watched what they needed and gave it to them in whatever way worked." In the medical bay, Dr. Rebecca Osi showed them diagnostic equipment that had been enhanced with components from mining scanners and sensor arrays. The modified equipment could detect medical conditions 3 days earlier than standard systems. Human medicine has always been about improvisation. We evolved treating injuries and illnesses with whatever we could find in nature.